Welcome to Bias Breakdown. I'm your host, Kara Rucker. Is Medicaid on the chopping block in the Republican-led budget proposal, also known as President Trump's Big Beautiful Bill? It's a familiar debate, one we heard back on the campaign trail. Trump promising massive federal spending cuts, cheered on by the right.
And next we will end the ridiculous and actually incredible waste of taxpayer dollars that is fueling the inflation crisis.
But uncertainty over where those cuts will be sparked pushback from the left.
The longer it hangs out there, the more the American people learn about Republican efforts to cut Medicaid dramatically, cut veterans' benefits, take food out of the mouths of children.
Now with new movement on a budget that looks to slash up to $1.5 trillion over the next decade and extend the Trump tax cuts, the question is back. Will the spending cuts include Medicaid? News outlets on the left say one thing. News outlets on the right say another. We'll sort through the politics and get to what's really going on. That's the focus of today's Bias Breakdown.
Join Straight Arrow News. See the slant, avoid the bias. When others skew the facts, we give you the truth down the center. Welcome to Bias Breakdown.
It's an issue that matters to 1 in 5 Americans, Medicaid. And with something so important on the line, reading the headlines doesn't inspire confidence. Some outlets on the left, like MSNBC and the Associated Press, wrote largest Medicaid cut in American history. Leader Jeffries issues warning about budget. Republicans consider cuts and work requirements for Medicaid jeopardizing care for millions. Some headlines from outlets on the right, like Fox News and The Federalist, read Dems weaponize Medicaid anxiety in bid to take down Trump-backed federal funding plan. And Republicans don't buy Democrats' lies about Medicaid cuts. Let's catch you up on where Congress is at in the process of passing the budget. We'll look at what the bill actually says, and then we'll go back to how the left and right are interpreting it, citing different sets of data. Here's what you should know. Congress is looking to pass a budget for fiscal year 2025 and set forth spending levels over the next several years. Right now, the government is being funded through a continuing resolution that extended 2024 spending levels. This is a comprehensive budget proposal at hand, referred to by Republicans as President Trump's Big Beautiful Bill, because it includes budgetary items while also extending Trump's 2017 tax cuts, boosts border security, national defense, and cuts government spending. How this works? Let's walk through the reconciliation process. This is how Republicans can work around any potential filibuster. The House first passes its version of a budget resolution, which it did in late February. That version called for $1.5 trillion in spending cuts over the next decade. The Senate passed an amended version of the House's budget blueprint in early April, but its version called for only $4 billion in spending cuts. The House and Senate must pass the same budget plan to move forward in the process. The House was scheduled to vote on the Senate's amended version April 9th, but the vote was called off because 12 Republicans were against the Senate's massive reduction from $1.5 trillion to $4 billion in its target spending cuts. But on April 10th, the House passed the Senate's version after a pledge by the Senate to bring back the House's target of $1.5 trillion to cut. That's where things stand today, an agreed budget blueprint. Next, House and Senate congressional committees will meet to talk specifics and outline them into a reconciliation bill that Republicans have said they hope both chambers will pass and have over to Trump's desk by Memorial Day. Inside the budget blueprint with the $1.5 trillion spending cuts, the words Medicaid and Medicare aren't mentioned. But the resolution does indicate the Committee on Energy and Commerce is tasked with reducing the deficit by not less than $880 billion over the next decade. That committee oversees programs such as Medicaid and Medicare. According to the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan government agency for data and analysis, this committee will oversee $8.8 trillion worth of spending, and Medicaid accounts for $8.2 trillion, or 93% of that. The Budget Office also wrote, when Medicare and Medicaid are excluded, the committee oversees a total of $581 billion in spending elsewhere, which is less than its $880 billion cut goal. The Budget Office indicating based off of this data, Republicans will have to cut into Medicaid. Democrats are using this data to support their claim that Medicaid cuts are coming.
Will Republicans move to cut Medicaid?
Absolutely. And it's going to be completely devastating for families across this country. There is no way that they can get to the cuts they want without deep, deep cuts to the Medicaid program.
Mike Johnson is completely blowing smoke right now because the budget framework that they passed a couple of days ago is very clear. It will cut $880 billion from the committee of jurisdiction that oversees the healthcare of Americans.
No one wants these savage cuts to Medicaid. It will decimate healthcare for so many people.
Republicans argue cuts to Medicaid benefits won't happen, suggesting any shrinkage of Medicaid is going to come from eliminating fraud, waste, and abuse, and use this data to suggest the numbers could be on par with their target. Let's look into how much fraud and waste is estimated within Medicare and Medicaid compared to the target $880 billion cut over 10 years, numbers cited by the House Speaker. Keep in mind these numbers are estimates, as the actual amount of fraud isn't known according to the government reports. According to the Government Accountability Office, another nonpartisan government agency for auditing, in fiscal year 2024, Medicare saw $54.3 billion paid in what's labeled as improper payments. During the same time frame, Medicaid saw an estimated $31 billion in improper payments, totaling between the two $85.3 billion. And to reach its $880 billion cuts over 10 years, the Committee on Energy and Commerce will need to cut $88 billion per year, suggesting the estimate of improper payments is close to its target. However, according to the GAO, improper payments include fraud, but also include payments made in an incorrect amount that should not have been made at all, or that lack sufficient documentation. In its report over improper payments, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services wrote the vast majority of improper payments occurred in situations where a reviewer could not determine if a payment was proper because of insufficient documentation. While fraud and abuse are one cause of improper payments, not all improper payments represent fraud or abuse. Top-ranking Republicans, including the president himself, have been asked the question for months, sticking to Medicaid benefits not being touched.
Medicaid, for example, which is the thing that the Democrats are trying to, frankly, lie to the American people about. No one has talked about cutting one benefit in Medicaid to anyone who's duly owed. The estimate is $51 billion a year, and Medicaid is lost to fraud. That's unconscionable.
We have to root out fraud, waste, and abuse. We have to eliminate people on, for example, on Medicaid who are not actually eligible to be there.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question. Okay? This will not be read my lips. There won't be read my lips anymore. We're not going to touch it. Now, we are going to look for fraud.
The rhetoric from lawmakers on the left and right match the same sentiment from the partisan media headlines we showed you at the top of this segment. In summary, news outlets on the left and right have contrasting takeaways from these spending cuts outlined in the budget proposal. While news outlets on the left say Medicaid benefits are at risk, news outlets on the right say they won't be touched. Right now, it's a game of prediction over whether benefits could be cut or not, the key word being could. And that's something news outlets across the political spectrum have in common. In the news media's coverage over the budget proposal, the word could is largely seen across the board. It could bring significant cuts to Medicaid. Medicaid cuts could be included in the budget plan. The deal could force cuts on Medicaid. While it could happen, as of right now, that is not officially on the table, as Republicans are still drafting the final bill, and it'll be weeks until we see the final proposal. And that's your bias breakdown. Thanks so much for watching this week's episode. If you're new here, I'm glad you found us. And if you're returning, thanks for coming back to the show. Remember, you can always find previous episodes on any of your favorite podcast platforms. If you found us here through our Straight Arrow News app or on YouTube, maybe consider showing the podcast some love on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Since we are so new, I'm trying to expand our traction over on those platforms as well. This week's episode was a doozy, since it's over such a massive topic that millions of Americans care about and are impacted by. The different narratives from news outlets with a left and right political bias can sometimes feel like whiplash. Medicaid is getting cut. No, it's not. Yes, it is. And so forth. It can be confusing and also exhausting. This episode leaned heavily into trying to easily explain the budget proposal and why some people think cuts are coming and why people say they're not, when really, the budget is still being written, so we just don't know yet. A big thank you to Allie Caldwell, who worked for a long time visually laying this out for us on graphics, and to Ian Kennedy, our video editor. We're trying to cut through the noise here to leave you with a better understanding of the facts, and I hope we were able to accomplish that this week. Leave any questions or feedback for me in the comments. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.